The more you learn about LV-426, the stranger it gets. Every answer just opens a deeper question, and all of them lead back to Ripley. We have spent decades trying to explain the Alien movies, but the real mystery was never the monsters, it was the discovery itself. A signal, a ship, and a decision that changed everything. Somewhere between Ripley's survival, Burke's choice, and that derelict, the thread connecting everything began to blur through rewrites, production changes, and conflicting ideas of what the alien truly was. And the more those versions drift apart, the more the original idea starts to make sense. I love the first two Alien films. I've seen them more times than I can count. And somehow they still feel like they're keeping a secret that no one's quite figured out. Who decides what's true in this universe? What's canon and what's myth? Let's see what we missed about LV-426 and why the answers might change how we see everything. Ripley is found after 57 years in hypersleep, and not long after, contact with the colony suddenly goes dark. The colony was running steadily.
There have been people there for over 20 years, and they never complained about any hostile organism.
Let's get the obvious part out of the way first. The reason that ship is found at the exact same time Ripley is rescued isn't some random plot convenience. Her report included the coordinates to the derelict ship, and that's why the Jordan family is sent out to check it. You probably knew that already. It's made pretty clear in the movie.
You sent them to that ship. Directive signed Burke, Carter J.
What you might not know is that it wasn't the famously evil Weyland-Yutani corporation that caused the connection. If we're going to call Burke the puppet master, since the xenomorphs are the obvious villains of the story, how do you make him even worse? Throughout the Alien series, Ripley keeps pointing out that the company doesn't care about anyone, that they just want the xenomorphs for the weapons division. And that's probably true. But in this case, it wasn't actually them who gave the order. It's not stated very clearly in the films, but if you look at other sources, Aliens, Newt's Tale, the novel Alien, River of Pain from 2014, and the official lore book The Weyland-Yutani Report from 2015, it turns out Burke acted on his own.
Don't let that fool you, I'm really an okay guy.
But of course you are.
The company didn't care about Ripley's report. They weren't actually hiding anything in that meeting. It was Burke who decided to send the Jordan family to those coordinates, not because anyone told him to, but because he saw the opportunity to climb the corporate ladder by getting his hands on what he thought was biological gold.
Chaos is a ladder.
Burke's motto should have been, "In space, no one can hear you invoice." Some fans, even those who prefer the special edition, think that the early Hadley's Hope scenes before the outbreak should have been left out, to keep the film darker and more mysterious like Alien. But I actually like the way those scenes drop subtle hints about Burke's part in all this. Al Simpson mentions that he got a message from somebody back home telling him to check out a set of coordinates out past the Ilium range. If you don't know the full story, it plays like a simple line in the conversation about the family wanting to claim any discovery they find. He replies, "They cut to the kids and your mind goes elsewhere." It's not essential to the plot, but I like that it's there. Speaking of past the Ilium range, something about this doesn't quite add up. Even if the ship was outside the area the colonists were authorized to explore, the Nostromo picked up the signal from orbit, so why didn't Hadley's Hope ever detect it? Maybe the real horror here is Wi-Fi coverage on LV-426, or are we seeing the outline of a plot hole here? Wait, I'm picking up movement. It's close, real close. Looks like a potential subscriber. Company policy says we make contact. What could possibly go wrong? This has been a big topic of speculation. Some fans believe the Nostromo crew deactivated the beacon while they were there, but we don't actually see that happening in the 1979 film, and I haven't found anything in the script or other sources that support it either. So let's jump a few years ahead. In Starlog magazine in 1987, James Cameron said that seismic activity destroyed the transmitter sometime between the two films, that a lava flow broke the hull open against a cliff. I don't know if you feel that explanation feels just as plot convenient as the Nostromo crew turning it off, but to me it makes a lot more sense. 50 years is a long time for that little mood, and by the time of Aliens they were already deep into terraforming. That could easily have changed the local climate and landscape in ways we couldn't predict. People say the ship has been there forever, but we'll soon see that's not exactly the case. Here's a fun fact. When they shot the derelict scenes for Aliens, you know, the ones added back for the special edition, the crew actually contacted collector Bob Burns, who still had the original Alien model from the first film. It had decayed over time, with several visible damages, including a large hole in the hull. Those damages were kept in the new shots, meant to represent the lava damages Cameron described. Cameron's early draft also included a sequence where the colony sent a rescue team to the ship after Newt's father Russ Jordan was facehugged. And Jordan was supposed to go with them, which of course led them into the massive egg chamber. The one we'll soon see might not be what we think. Several more people got facehugged, setting off the chain reaction that Ripley and the colonial marines later walk into. It's not easy to pin down the right explanation when writers working in the same series don't exactly follow the same blueprint. Where have you seen that before? And while plenty of fan theories have floated around over the years, I think it's safe to land on the lava explanation in this case. So instead, let's take a closer look at the ship itself. There's been a lot of speculation about how long the ship had been on LV-426 when the Nostromo crew found it in 2122. Let's hear what Dallas says in the film.
Alien life form. Looks like it's been dead a long time. Fossilized.
Some say the ship had been there for thousands of years, maybe even longer. I like that idea, because it gives the creature's origin a kind of distance that adds to the mystery. Dan O'Bannon had another idea, one that Ridley Scott also liked. It involved a massive pyramid-like structure that H.R. Giger called the egg silo, something that was already there on the planet itself. The ship landed, the crew went inside, and that's where they found the eggs. The concept was dropped later, most likely due to budget or time constraints. Ridley Scott later suggested that the ship was carrying the eggs as a kind of biological weapon, meant to be dropped on other worlds. But one of the eggs was disturbed, the pilot, the space jockey we see in the first film, was face-hugged, and the infection forced the crash landing on LV-426. That in turn triggered the distress signal. Nothing says limited budget like merging two incompatible story ideas.
Right.
A few decades after the original film, Ridley Scott's prequels arrived. Prometheus offered a few hints, that the engineers had been experimenting with biological weapons on LV-223, the planet they visit in that film. But there's no mention of eggs. The idea could have been tied to the events on LV-426, either that the eggs were the engineers' creation, or an unintended side effect of the weapons research there. It actually fits neatly into the timeline if you assume the Derelict crashed long before the events of Alien. But then came Alien Covenant with a retcon. A twist suggesting that the android David was the one who used the black goo to create the first xenomorph eggs. That would mean the eggs ended up on LV-426 less than 20 years before the Nostromo found the Derelict, and that the engineer we see there was face-hugged and fossilized within just a few years. Along with that, much of the mystery disappeared. Scott even said in an interview on the Empire podcast in 2017 that the eggs were created by David, not the engineers. That makes it even harder to decide what the real explanation is, canon or not. So let's take a closer look at the egg chamber itself. When information across a franchise isn't consistent, it's hard to know how much weight to give each source. So let's look at what they each say about the egg chamber. As we've seen, Scott and O'Bannon once had slightly different ideas about whether the eggs came with the ship or were already on the planet when it crashed and the distress signal began. But something in Scott's version doesn't quite add up. Maybe I'm taking the visual details too literally here, but look at the size of that egg chamber. That tiny dot there is Kane lowering himself down. When the Nostromo crew enters the ship, we first see them climb up a wall. We don't know exactly how tall it is, but is there really room for the massive egg chamber we see inside the ship? Now look at this clip from Prometheus. Sure, it's a 3D model and not a camera shot, but there's no reason to assume the projection tech completely missed the scale of the ship. Maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but that's kind of my brand. Judging by the size of the humans here, does it really look like that ship could fit an entire chamber of that size in its lower section? I know what you're going to say. This isn't the same ship as the one on LV-426. And you're right. But several official sources, including comments from Scott himself, have stated that the Juggernaut from Prometheus is actually larger than the Derelict on LV-426. At this point, even the facehuggers are confused about canon. I haven't found any official sources with precise dimensions for the Derelict, but unofficial fan estimates put it at about 116 meters wide, with the bridge roughly 30 meters high. Scott says the ship came with the eggs, yet in his original film the chambers they found in doesn't look like it could possibly fit there, and his own prequel Prometheus visually confirms it. So what are we supposed to believe? Is there no real explanation, or is the details just so inconsistent that we have to accept a few plot holes in the story? The first thing we can say with some confidence is that the catastrophe on LV-426, the one we see the aftermath of in Aliens when the colony has already been wiped out by xenomorphs, was set in motion by Ripley's return in combination with Burke's unsanctioned actions. You can read the full story of the colony's fall in the novel Alien: River of Pain. But the essence is this: Ripley was a cause and Ripley was the salvation.
They can bill me.
The company didn't unleash something new. They just woke up something that had always been waiting. After that, things get more complicated. I like the sense of mystery, that human ignorance can awaken something ancient and sleepy. It turns LV-426 into more than just a setting. It becomes a crossroads. That's why I prefer the idea that an ancient structure was already there, no matter when the engineer ship crashed.
It's what I choose to believe.
It gives the story a much deeper sense of myth than the David explanation. I do like David as a character and how he ties into the long-running android theme that's been there since the beginning. A for Ash, B for Bishop, C for Cole, and D for David.
Making you guys pretty close, huh?
Not too close, I hope.
Somewhere Ripley's watching this and thinking, you people never learn. What do you think? Is there a clear chain of cause and effect here, or is this one of those things we each have to interpret for ourselves? If the eggs didn't come with a derelict, then where did they come from? I'd love to hear your theories, and you know exactly where to share them. Thank you for watching, and remember, in space no one can hear you, but the signal is still out there.